Hello, guys, and welcome to Odds on Premier League Match Day 24. We have Tom Rennie at the other side. And Tom, is this a three-horse race now for the title, or one horse, only Man City, in your mind?
I still think it's one horse. I mean, let's not go wild here, but it looks like there's going to be a great battle for second, and that's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Also, a great battle for the fourth spot, especially between Aston Villa and Tottenham Hotspur. So stay with us. Let's analyze this weekend in the Premier League. Of course, press the like, ask any question to Tom Rennie. And now let's go on with the show. Well, and the first game is Man City Everton. Man City can go finally top of the table. It's been weeks and weeks and weeks without Man City on top. Now that they've recovered, and we saw them in the starting 11, Haaland, De Bruyne, but they even suffered a little bit against Brentford. They had to come back. It's 9 consecutive wins for Man City before this game against Everton. For Everton, Tom, 3 consecutive draws, perhaps in the both teams to score, because we saw a huge defensive mistake from Man City. We could find some value here.
I wouldn't go both teams to score, because Everton have only scored 26 goals this season, so it's just over 1 a game. Plus, Dominic Calvert-Lewin has stopped scoring. There's some talk that Abdoulaye Doucouré might be back and fit. When he is playing, Everton are scoring. When he is not playing, Everton are not scoring. And so I think there's too many variables for Everton to bet on them scoring a goal. The only way they do score a goal would be to follow a pattern we've seen a lot from Man City this season. In fact, 2 patterns. Number 1 is the opposition score first and City go on to win. And that's happened more in away games than home games. Secondly, as we saw in the Burnley match, which really annoyed me last week, is that it's 3-0, they are cruising, it's over, and they give away a consolation goal. So those are the only scenarios I could see it. But I think Everton are so poor offensively, it's not something I'll be backing in this particular match round. I'm obviously going to back Man City to win. They are going to go top of the table in this early kickoff on Saturday. I was at the game on Monday against Brentford where, they started reasonably slowly and didn't quite get to their free-flowing, brilliant best. But as the game went on, after Brentford scored, as Kevin De Bruyne got more and more influential, as Phil Foden found pockets of space that only he could, and De Bruyne found him in those pockets in a way that only he could, they got stronger and stronger as the game went on. So how do you make money from a Man City victory? That is what this is going to be. Well, look at the 2 handicaps. -1 brings you in at 1.62. I know it's not great. I know, but I've said this a few times now. Betting on big Man City wins is not the banker it used to be. Look at the last 2 results, 3-1. There's been some 2-1s this season. There's been some 2-0s this season. They don't score 7 anymore very often. They score 2, they score 3, they get the game won, they take off Haaland, they move on. So -1, 1.62, not great. -2, 3-0 victory. Yeah, can just about see that. That brings you in at 2.5, which is actually quite long for Manchester City. The other things I picked out here, and this is maybe the only other way you make some on Man City, is picking out form goal scorers. At the moment, it's not Haaland. So De Bruyne to score. Kevin De Bruyne playing amazingly right now. He scores and City win, brings you in at 4.5. That's wild. That's wildly high for someone who's been that influential. Of course, we then fall into the trap of Pep Roulette. The other player I picked out is Phil Foden. Scored a hat-trick in midweek. Players often go on runs of scoring goals. Foden scores and City win. That's an anytime goal scorer, brings you in at 3.
And we don't have to forget that Man City, they are playing Champions League against Copenhagen. It's true, it's Copenhagen, but still, it's the knockout stages. So perhaps when they score 1 or 2 or 3, they start making changes and thinking in the next game. Difficult to make money out of this Man City Everton. The important thing is if they win, they go on top of the table. Next game, Fulham, Bournemouth, and here we have 2 teams in bad run. It's winless in 6 for Fulham, winless in 4 for Bournemouth. Fulham couldn't hold the 2-0 advantage they had with Burnley. Also, Bournemouth couldn't beat Forest. We see the odds, and I was preparing the game, Tom, or the show, and this is the game that screams draw to me.
How did you know? It's like we're simpatico these days. This game screams draw on every possible level. Look, Fulham's loss of form, it's not a coincidence. They lost Raul Jimenez, who had a couple of spectacular games against Nottingham Forest, against West Ham, and he played well against Liverpool as well, if memory serves. He picked up an injury, and we're not going to see him again until next month. You then go to what the next striker is, and really there's no one of any particular quality playing in that position for Fulham. And because of that, Armando Broja has come in, but we don't know yet what we're getting from the Chelsea loanee. So all sorts of issues there with this Fulham team, who are not safe yet. I think 26 points is 7-8 clear of the relegation battle. It's a great big wedge of points, considering those down there don't really get many, but it's still not safety for Fulham right now, so they want to get there. Similar story for Bournemouth as well, just above them on 27. 2 defeats in their last 5 ain't too bad, but just 1 victory in that 5, and that was 5 games ago. I think what's happened is they went on that spectacular run, getting them right out of trouble, but those players were playing so far above themselves, you expect these levels to come back down to where they are. I think Dominic Solanke remains a really good goal scorer, though if he didn't get gifted a goal against West Ham a couple of weeks ago, you didn't really see them scoring in that game. I know that when it went to 1-0, they had a couple of chances, but at 0-0, West Ham tend to be the better team. They did all right there. And against Nottingham Forest, again, couldn't seal the deal. Hudson-Odoi pulled it back and then couldn't move on from that point. So I think both teams right now would love a draw. I think despite the press about Bournemouth, they are able to close a game down. They're not just some sort of Iriola's an idiot and they're going to go out all out attack to win a game. That's not what they are. He has been able to combine solid defense with energy in attack, good possession football, lots of good stuff in there, and it screams draw. So 3.5 for the draw. If you're looking for both teams to score, because it screams 1-1, frankly, draw, both teams score, brings in at 4.33. But with already 3.5 for the draw, I feel like you don't need to worry too much about that. 2 draws in 5 for Bournemouth, 2 draws in 5 for Fulham. Both the last 2 games follow the form.
Exactly. Corello is telling us exactly the same. 1-1 as a correct score. It's always very risky, but it screams draw. Next one is Liverpool-Burnley. Liverpool even more favorite than Man City in this match day. The bookies don't have any doubts. They are going to beat and probably thrash Burnley, according to them. Tell me what happened in the game with Arsenal. They lost, and now they have 4 winnable games before facing Man City in that date, 10th of March, probably an important date to see which team is going to win the Premier League.
The frustration about last week for us is that I can't legislate for individual mistakes, right? Nobody can. You can't plan for that. And without the 2 mistakes leading to 2-1 and 3-1, it does finish as we thought it would, as a draw with both teams scoring. It felt like a 1-1 draw. It felt like maybe someone could shade it 2-1, but we went draw on both teams to score. And the reason they lost it was because Virgil van Dijk and Alisson had a terrible moment, really bad moment. Sometimes that happens to them in the opening 10 minutes of games. It very rarely happens late on in matches. So that was a surprise. And the late goal, salting the wounds and bad goalkeeping, frankly. And briefly on Burnley, I think an excellent performance last week against Man City in terms of what they could possibly do, keep the score down, nick to goal. I also think that signing David Fofana up front is a decent signing for Burnley because they've needed a goal scorer all season, and showing that they can score goals, as they did against Fulham, 2 match rounds ago, I think is really impressive. So, look, I think that this game is only going to end one way. You know what way it's going to end. It's a Liverpool victory. How do you make some money on it? Right now, with no Mo Salah for Liverpool, I'm not going to go for a goal scorer and a final score because you don't really know who that front 3 is going to be. Darwin Núñez carrying an injury, but we are going to get a reaction here. So Liverpool win on its own is no good. Liverpool to win -2 handicap, that's what I'll be looking at here, brings you in at a quite handy 2.25. Lower than we'd like, but I think that's a really safe bet, -2 for a Liverpool victory. Go to -3, brings you at 3.75. That's really long for a big Liverpool win. And if we look across the season, in fact, at recent games, 4 goals against Chelsea, 4 goals against Manchester United, 4 goals against Fulham, 5 in the Cup against West Ham, I think 5 as well against Norwich in the FA Cup. They are scoring lots of goals at home right now. And Burnley, away from home this season, 2 victories, 7 defeats, lost at City, lost at Villa, conceded plenty of goals in that time. Got to go big Liverpool win.
Indeed, Liverpool -2, for instance, for Hassan. We saw this game only 1 month and a half ago in the Christmas period, 26th of December, and Liverpool won 2-0 at Turf Moor. Well, difficult to make money out of this game. Next one is Luton Town, Sheffield United. And here, of course, we have to consider Luton Town as favorites because they are surprising us week after week. We had a great joy and entertainment in the game against Newcastle. The 446 undefeated games for Luton Town in all competitions. They beat Sheffield United already in the reverse fixture 3-2. The problem for me, Tom, is this low odds for Luton Town. 1.78 is too short, in my opinion.
Yes, I'd agree. I think that is too short for a Luton victory, despite the form you mentioned and the fact that Sheffield United are just so bad. They are just so bad. I mean, I can't recall the bet we did last week for Sheffield United. We went Villa win and Watkins score, as I recall. So that came in for Villa Sheffield United. But even I, with the sheer amount of negativity that I feel about Sheffield United, in terms of how bad they've been this season, I didn't think they'd be as bad as that. It was utterly atrocious. The game was finished. Well, it was finished on 30 minutes. But then we came out in the second half thinking, oh, we might get a game here. And then Moreno scored after, 2 minutes? And then it was like, oh, like I was doing the play-by-play commentary of that game. And there was a point where I thought, I wish I brought a book because I had nothing to talk about. I was talking to my co-host, like, dinner plans? Going out with a girlfriend tonight? How are the kids? It's 25 minutes to go. Like, it was so awful. And so, look, not much else to say on Sheffield United. They haven't got goal scorers. The defense is poor. The manager's losing it a bit, having to go at a linesman eating a ham sandwich. So it's not worth your time. And no victories away all season doesn't make it worth our time to bet on. As you mentioned, Luton 1.78 is too low. So look at the form of Luton's victories at home this season and performances this season. Away from Brighton, which was anomalous, all the games have been close. 1-2 defeat, 3-4 defeat, 1-0 victory, 2-3 defeat. It always is close with Luton, bar the exceptions that prove the rule. I think this game is so important for Luton Town. I think they have to win this game if they stand any chance of staying in the Premier League. And I know they'll be on a good run of form, but you have to beat Sheffield United to achieve your goals this season. They are 6 points for the picking. So I'm going to pick a player out here. Elijah Adebayo scored in the victory over Brighton, a hat-trick, scored in the victory over Newcastle United. A player on a run and in form deserves our backing. If you take Adebayo to score any time and Luton to win, we get above the threshold. That's above the double your money threshold, 3.4. Take it. I fancy it.
Well, Hassan and Victor are taking the draw, which is very risky. Back in Sheffield United, Tyson says, keep it simple, Luton to win. But again, it pays so low for a team like Luton. If they win, they are going to overcome Nottingham Forest and Brentford already in the standings. So it's a very important game, as you said, and they can put 4 points difference with Everton. If Everton, as we expect, the Toffees lose against Man City. Next game, Tottenham Brighton. Here in Oddspedia, we have a tool, Tom, and the statistics show us a fire when they think this is going to be a both teams to score. And I think we can all agree that this should be a high-scoring game, both teams to score. For Tottenham, last 6 games were over 2.5 goals. For Brighton. Away from home, they are losing, but usually we saw plenty of goals. And even in the reverse fixture, we saw 6 goals between these teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the safest bets of the weekend, frankly, as safe as a bet can be. In terms of Tottenham have scored so many goals in their last 10 games, 24 goals scored, 2 goals plus per game average across the last 10. That is extraordinary for any team in the Premier League to achieve that. Richarlison scoring goals on a regular basis. James Maddison coming back in. Kulusevski has been impressive. Bentancur has been very good. Offensively, great. Defensively, 18 goals conceded in that 10. you always feel like Tottenham are going to concede a goal because they play so risky, so high. Vicario is suspect on crosses, and that's been noted now by managers. Get a corner and Tottenham could be in trouble, as Everton noted and executed brilliantly last week. And so that's always going to be a problem with the way Tottenham play under this particular manager. And Brighton, we know, are very similar. They will always go for the jugular as opposed to sit on a lead. And that has led to them having, I think, every game this season, bar 3 in the league now, have been both teams to score. And a bad little run from the West Ham game through to that shocking loss against Luton, but were great against a poor Crystal Palace last week. Good to see João Pedro scoring from open play. It was becoming a bit of a, is he just a penalty specialist narrative? But both teams are going to score. It's going to be a great game of football, this. So it just depends on your gut instinct. Who's going to win it? Last year, it was a controversial match at this stadium between these two, and they were both chasing European football. For me, I'm just going to shade for Tottenham. Tottenham win and both teams to score brings me in at 2.75, something we've seen against Brentford and Bournemouth in their last couple of home games. So I quite fancy that. I wouldn't discount the draw, a high-scoring draw. We saw a 4-4 last week involving Luton, so why not again this week? Seen a couple in the Premier League this season. Draw and both teams score 4.5. And then again, I'm picking out a form goal scorer. Richarlison is that man, playing really good right now. Goals against Everton last week. His numbers are really respectable now in the Premier League, Richarlison. At points, people have thought him a bit of a joke, me absolutely included in that. But now he's finding the back of the net with regularity and making a big difference. 10 goals in this Premier League season is pretty decent for him. So Richarlison scores and Tottenham win, brings you in at a decent number 2.
Now the joke is only Anthony. We can still laugh at his performances. Probably even Heung-min Son is back after playing in the Cup of Asia, probably. So this is also very important for Tottenham. I think everyone agrees that we should see plenty of goals in this game. I also expect a lot of goals in Wolves Brentford, and perhaps also Juan is back and play with Wolves. They got an impressive victory in Stamford Bridge. The first 2 goals are a bit lucky, but still impressive. Only 1 defeat in the last 6 games for Brentford. Is the opposite. They are getting closer to the relegation spots, 3 points away, 7 defeats in the last 8 games. But we see plenty of goals usually in both teams, in the games involving both teams.
We have in the last 2 or 3 weeks, absolutely. The last 2 Wolves games have been amazing, the Man United match and the Chelsea match. But before then, if you look at the pattern of their home results, they've all actually been quite tight victories. If you look at 1-0 against Burnley, the 1-1 draw against Forest, 2-1 victory over Chelsea at home. And yes, they beat Everton 3-0, but on the balance of play, that game was actually quite close. So I think they will revert to that sort of pattern, slightly more cautious, a little bit less adventurous, look to score the goal, close the game down, professional stuff I'd expect from Wolves this season. And it's worth noting too, at home, despite some impressive results, they've lost 3, they've drawn 3, they've only won 5 of their 11 matches. That's not enough to just keep you above that relegation battle and maybe get them thinking about European contention as well. I think both are long shots. They're the embodiment of mid-table Wolverhampton Wanderers, which is a compliment considering where they started the season. But I just don't know if I go high scoring this game. And that leads to Brentford as well, who, you're absolutely right, they are struggling right now. I think they'll stay in the Premier League, but it isn't going to be easy. As I mentioned earlier, I went to the game on Monday against Man City. You can't really judge teams with the way they play against Man City, but certainly you can see there is no room for manoeuvre with Thomas Frank. Brian Mbeumo continues to be out. Ivan Toney and Mope are scoring goals and playing well. That's great. But then when he wanted to change things against Man City, the cupboard is bare. They do not have game changers on their bench, and their team looked exhausted around about 60 minutes in that game on Monday. Again, Man City, caveat there. But it's a very thin squad. And if Ivan Toney doesn't do it, if Neil Mope doesn't do it, if the players start to flag and the game is 0-0 after 60, 70 minutes, I think this game swings in favour of Wolverhampton Wanderers, following the pattern of games you just spoke about. Plus, worth noting, 4 defeats in 5 for Brentford now. They are losing a lot of football matches, including reasonably heavily as well. Against Wolves a few weeks ago, a loss to them in the Cup as well. The loss against Crystal Palace, maybe the most shocking here, allowing Palace to score 3 goals against them. So Wolves win at 2.10 might be worth your time. I'd probably take that. You know I love a group bet. And following Wolves' form this season, 1-0, 2-0, or 2-1, grouped, 3.5. I found that for this morning. Really, really like that. And again, I'm fancying scorers right now. Mope and Cunha, two players in terrific form. Mope is 3-3 in the league, 5-5 in all comps, if memory serves. Cunha scored a hat-trick, sort of, against Chelsea last week. Forget the score. Take the scorers, Mope and Cunha to score in the match. Brings you in way over double your money.
Well, we have some comments going for the draw. Victor, Johannes, and Shea, and some others going for Wolves victory with both teams to score. For instance, for Hassan, Shimi is also adding up your goal scorer, Mateus Cunha to score or assist. So plenty of options. This could be a good game, actually, to put some bets. We have great odds for this Wolves Brentford, and the late kickoff on Saturday is Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest in danger, only 2 points away from relegation. Not sure about the bouncing back effect with the new manager, with Nuno. They drew with Bournemouth. It's only 1 point in the last 3 games. Newcastle, after conquering Villa Park, then they drew with Luton. The positive, I guess, is scoring 8 goals in only 2 games.
Absolutely. I think that was a key issue for Newcastle over Christmas. They stopped scoring goals because the squad needed such rotation, which it wasn't getting, and they were struggling to score. But, I mean, on Forest, they did get a little bounce from Nuno, a couple of wins in a row. But the trouble is you then need to build on that. And we go back to seeing a pretty average squad of players, inconsistent group of players. There are people like Hudson-Odoi, who scored against Bournemouth, who's got talent, scored a great goal. We won't see him again for 7 weeks now. But it was a really good goal. And you could go through the squad. Gio Reyna's come in. He is one of those players. The Americans love him, but he's all right. Great 1 week, disappears for a month. You need more than that if you're Nottingham Forest right now. You need someone to go on a 6 to 7 week run. You need someone to do a Cunha or a Mope, step up and go on a run of form to get you safe. And at the moment, I'm not seeing that with anyone from Forest. Maybe Taiwo or Owoniyi coming back and scoring last week, or I think the goal was disallowed in the end. But him coming back and playing well and looking fit, I think that's massive for Nottingham Forest. Without him, the attack didn't work. And in terms of Newcastle, it's still a huge, ridiculous raft of injuries. I mentioned to you a couple of weeks ago, the season's a total write-off for Newcastle. There's a possibility they might challenge West Ham for Conference League. Potentially, that might be seen as a success. But still no Tonali, still no Joe Linton, still no Pope, Target, Anderson, Isak, Willock, Lascelles. Looks like Anthony Gordon's missing for this one too. So good time for Harvey Barnes to come back in, who scored against Luton. But, I don't know what to expect from Newcastle at this moment, to be honest with you. I think they are a good, solid mid-table team this season. Next year, I'm sure better. This year, it's not there. How's this game going to go? Who needs it more? I don't know. I'm going to go. I've got a few bets for you, right? That will make some money. And then you've got to go with your gut. Nottingham Forest. If they are to win this game, I think they've got to keep the score down. So Forest to win an under 3.5 goals in the match brings you in at 5. And that is what they need to do. I'm thinking about the victory over Newcastle at St. James's Park without the late third goal. I'm thinking about the win over Manchester United. I'm thinking about the tight loss against Arsenal. I think they'll set up like that and look to nick a goal to win it. Look at the 1-1 draw against Bournemouth for the setup and the style of play. I'd also take the under on Newcastle. I know they're scoring lots of goals at this particular moment in time, but with a low block Nottingham Forest at home, I don't think this will be the free scoring kind of performance that they got against Aston Villa and their notorious high line, and Luton Town, who they had to come back in that game, right? They were all guns blazing to try and score in that game. So though Newcastle were scoring lots of goals in this particular run, I think doing it against Forest is going to be difficult. And you've got 2 group bets here. Narrow victory either way. 1-0, 2-0, 2-1 Forest at 5. 1-0, 2-0, 2-1 Newcastle, 3.25. So I see it being narrow. Pick your winner.
Both teams to score is an option for Shimi and for Mam Spaghetti in this game. And Hassan says, no, Victor, that this is a Nottingham Forest win for sure. Well, for sure. I don't think so, but perhaps it's a Nottingham Forest win. I think they need it more because, they can get into the relegation spots very, very soon. On Sunday, we have 2 games. First one, West Ham Arsenal. Last West Ham victory was against Arsenal, actually, at the Emirates, 28th of December. At that time, we thought the run for Arsenal to fight for the Premier League was over. But there you go. They have only 2 points disadvantage now with the Reds, 3 consecutive wins for Arsenal. So the situation has changed dramatically from the reverse fixture till now for these two teams.
Yeah, I mean, look, West Ham are still having a very good season. I think they are in a bit of a rut at this particular moment. I had David Moyes' style when things go wrong described to me recently as a lockdown setting, and I think that's quite nice for thinking about the way West Ham are playing right now. Look, everyone knows how West Ham play now. They are really very good at low block, forget the ball, attack with incision, and win the game. And in fact, when games are level, they're actually very good as well. When things are in the balance, they don't take too many risks. They create a few chances. They're very bad when they're behind, as we've seen in recent weeks. They are not a good team at chasing the game. So if they go down in this particular game, it's very likely they lose. Losing Paqueta is obviously massive. And at the moment, the signing of Calvin Phillips looks hideous. He has been appalling in his first couple of appearances, cost them a goal in 2 minutes against Bournemouth and came on against Man United and somehow looked the worst player on the pitch. So I hope he doesn't play anytime soon for West Ham because he's upset the midfield. And they're trying to change the shape to accommodate him. And it's kind of pointless doing that because he's not good enough. So West Ham are interesting at the moment. No Paqueta too is such a huge loss because his through balls to Bowen and Kudus are so crucial to what West Ham do. Plus, they didn't reinforce the left wing in January, which was super dumb. And also, it's worth noting the home form is the reason why West Ham aren't challenging Champions League this season or Europa League this season. Away from home, 5 wins. Brilliant. At home, 5 wins. Not good enough. Only 2 defeats, it's got to be said, but 4 draws. The Crystal Palace draw, the Bournemouth draw, and the Brighton draw. Should have been 9 points. Only 3 points. That could prove costly in the end. For Arsenal, I think that you're absolutely right to say the title race for them is back on. I think the performance against Liverpool last week was their best of the season. And what's interesting about that for me is that Kai Havertz played a role we are told he hated at Chelsea. Central striker, playing in people left and right of him. Probably had his best game for Arsenal, in my view. Jorginho, who hasn't done a great deal of passing forward during his Arsenal career, comes in and I thought was, along with Kai Havertz, the best player on the pitch against Liverpool last week. Defensively, looking more solid. I think David Raya is growing into his role. Declan Rice continues to be outstanding. And Martinelli and Saka had good games last week. So it's all ticking over quite nicely for Arsenal following that all is lost December. How does this game go? I don't think it's going to be a thriller, frankly. I think the first goal wins it. And in my view, despite the fact West Ham have beaten Arsenal twice already this season, and Arsenal's away form is patchy with just 2 wins in their last 5, it'll be almost identical to the game against Nottingham Forest. The only difference is I don't think West Ham can score right now. That leads me to an Arsenal victory. To make some money on that, go Arsenal win to 0. That's mainly because I don't see West Ham scoring as much as it is Arsenal scoring then shutting up shop. 1-0, 2-0, nice win for Arsenal, easy peasy.
Well, we have some trust on West Ham here. Double chance, West Ham both teams to score. I believe in your team, Tom, for Hassan. The odds are very, very good. 6.4, 6.3 for West Ham to win. Might be worth taking a look at these odds because Arsenal to win is very low. Perhaps the Arsenal title race lasts 1 week. Like it happened with Aston Villa, for instance, in the Christmas period. I'm talking about Aston Villa. Our next game is Aston Villa Man United. And Villa Park is not a fortress anymore. We saw it with Newcastle. We saw it with Chelsea. In the FA Cup, it's not Castle Rock anymore. Now that I'm watching again Game of Thrones, for instance. Villa Park can be taken, Tom, and Man United. They are winning games. Even they lost the XG, by the way, against your team, but a 3-0 victory. And the bookies still place Aston Villa really, really favorite. So if you are a Red Devil, this could be your chance to make good money. 3.5 for Man United to win.
I like the Game of Thrones comparison because in the 90s, they were like season 2. And now they're a bit season 6, aren't they? Man United. It's all got a bit depressing. And what's the point of the Dragons? Couldn't they have just flown there? Let's start with Villa because I think that Newcastle loss was a shock, massive shock to me. Let me tell you, I didn't see that coming at all. Not many did. One defeat this season, though, is still very, very impressive at home for Aston Villa. Though it is only one victory in the last 3 matches at home. But look at the results this season: 30 goals scored, 11 conceded, and in the last 5 games at home, the last 3 have been both teams to score. Before that, there was the 1-0 wins against City and Arsenal. Before that, a whole run of both teams to score again. So if you go for a Villa victory here, you've got to look at Villa winning both teams to score. Do that, it brings you in at 3.5. Really impressed by them offensively last week, though Sheffield United offered absolutely nothing in response to what Villa had got. Watkins scoring again, 2-2. That fills me with lots of confidence. Leon Bailey getting the nod in front of Moussa Diaby right now. Scored a great goal last week. John McGinn back in a more natural position for him in deep-lying midfield, along with Kamara and Douglas Luiz, who was incredible last week. His through ball to Watkins was one of the assists in European football this season. It was outstanding. Defensively, look, no Pau Torres and no Tyrone Mings all season. That would be their number 1 defensive partnership. Ezri Konsa going to be missing in this one. So I do think defensively there are problems, but offensively good. Take the Villa win as well, frankly. I think that's pretty decent odds for Villa to win a home game, considering the way the season has gone at 2.16. But as I mentioned, both teams to score brings us above the threshold. I like Watkins too. Watkins scores and Villa win. That brings you in a tiny little sum as well. And I've also taken here, because I fancy Villa, would you believe, the group bet of 1-0, 2-0 and 2-1 brings you in at 3.75. And briefly on Manchester United, I thought they were great against Wolverhampton Wanderers. I thought the first half may be their best 45 minutes of the season they've had in any particular game. I didn't think they were great against West Ham last week, if I'm honest. I think West Ham right now are just struggling to score goals. I think the West Ham of 6-7 weeks ago might have won that game, let alone drawn it without Paqueta, as discussed. I think they're not as good. Of course, they're not. The Rasmus Højlund goal is a super solo goal, but the other 2, I think they take advantage of West Ham on the break. I don't think they're great goals from Garnacho. I don't really think Kobbie Mainoo is the second coming of Roy Keane, as the Man United press department seem to believe he is. And I still think they're suspect. And so in this particular game, looking at Villa's over-season home form, Man United's away form, which is 1 win in 5. That was the smash and grab finish against Wolves. Got to go Villa, and so I am.
Well, Tom trusts Aston Villa. Among our listeners, we have plenty of opinions. Villa will win this. Keep it simple for Hassan. Here, Rhys says he cannot back Aston Villa after the defeat against Chelsea, for instance, and the odds are very good for both ends, especially if you are backing Man United. And the final game in this match day is on Monday, where we have Crystal Palace, Chelsea, and perhaps Chelsea put all the eggs in the FA Cup basket, I guess, after the victory against Aston Villa. Finally, some joy for Chelsea's fans after being humiliated by Wolves and Liverpool in the Premier League. Is 10 defeats already this season in the Premier League. And for Palace, this is an important game, but because they are only 5 points away from relegation, but luckily for them, they got a massive victory against Sheffield United to be a little bit more calm. Tom, how do you see this one? It's difficult to trust none of these teams, to be honest.
To be honest with you, of the other 9 games, I have felt very confident that something I've suggested is going to come in. I feel really confident in a lot of my bets this week. This one, I don't know. I have not got a clue on this particular game.
By the way, it's odd, this head-to-head between these two teams.
It's wild. It's wild. These odds are wild for these two teams because the bookies don't know. The fans don't know. The pundits don't know. And your beloved expert on Oddspedia doesn't know what's going to happen on this game. Look, in terms of form, right? Crystal Palace form. And here's another example of why I don't know. Ready? Last 5 games. Loss, win, loss, win, loss. How am I going to work with that? Right? Chelsea's form across the last 5 games. You ready? Loss, loss, win, win, win. What? That doesn't make any sense. Look, I think Crystal Palace have lost Michael Olise again. There's doubts about Eze being fit for this game. And when you take those 2 players out, there is no cover creatively for Crystal Palace. That is a huge, huge problem. They do not score many goals, just 26 goals this season, home and away, in their 6 victories picked up is nowhere near good enough. And at home this season, Selhurst Park, they are averaging 14 goals and 11. That's just over 1 goal a game. Nowhere near enough. 5 defeats at home this season. Now, they have won the last 2. Again, what? In terms of Chelsea, our friend there mentioned how good they were in midweek against Villa last night, Wednesday night. Absolutely right. Agree completely. But they were also atrocious a few days before that against Wolverhampton Wanderers. And the Liverpool game was right down there with the worst team performances that I have endured from anyone this season. I think Nkunku coming back in time will prove fruitful. I think that Enzo Fernandez scoring that great free kick will hopefully build some confidence in him because he has looked a husk of a player that we thought we were getting in the Premier League since coming. Look, I am just going to go with my gut here and say Chelsea win. I'm going to go Chelsea win because of the 2 players missing for Palace and how bad Palace's home form has been this year and Nkunku being back in. That leads me to that scoreline. I cannot predict this on form. I just can't. Chelsea's away form this season, 4 victories, but 6 defeats. 1 victory, but 4 defeats in their last 5. You cannot get anything from that. So go with your gut. Mine is for a Chelsea win. I don't see many goals. I think Chelsea will try and break down a low block. They're very bad at that. Crystal Palace would try and counter. Without Eze and Elise, they're bad at that. Chelsea win under 2.5, brings you in at 4.5. Under 3.5, really conservative, brings you in at 2.63 last I looked. So that's what I'm going with here. But frankly, I might avoid this if I were you.
Well, and the head-to-head is also very important. I think when we see 12 wins in the last 12 games for Chelsea, usually this means something. But as GP is telling us, to inconsistent teams, it's better not to touch them. Or if you don't know what is going to happen, always the draw is a very good option, as Mams Packet is telling us, because the odds are usually very good, as we can see on the screen. Well, Tom, this is it for this weekend in the Premier League. Last week, we nailed our international ACCA, thanks also to your participation with your safe bet. Now is...
This week, I'm not doing Man City, would you believe it? This week, my safe bet is going to be Liverpool to win against Burnley, but it's so low, make it a -1 handicap. It's still quite low, but thrown into the ACCA, that'll make you some money.
Very confident. Salah and Trent Alexander-Arnold are back or not yet?
Alexander-Arnold, yes. Mo Salah, I don't know yet. I think we still wait a couple more weeks, but I could be surprised.
All right. And the ACCA?
3-team ACCA this week. Last week we were let down by Tottenham and that 94th minute equaliser for Everton, but I've still put Tottenham in again this week. I know. Liverpool beat Burnley. That's a given. I think Villa beat Man United. There's risk in that one. Take Tottenham over Brighton in a thrilling game. 4.83. That's gone up since I picked it this morning. That will continue to rise, I think, as we get towards the weekend. But that's a risky treble, but I like it.
Well, Tom, thank you very much for your insights, for your opinion and your data. You are great, Tom. Bye-bye, Tom.